hello. It is another live stream. One might say another surprise stream. So in this stream, I would like to set up the F-sharp analyzers from the new or newly improved analyzers SDK from Ionide. And we're basically going to skim through the documentation, but I'll just give you a rundown of how to really do it. And yeah, just give you a bit of a more hands-on video kind of format of what's described over on this page, and I might give some context of why we do things which aren't fully captured in this how-to guide, although pretty much everything you really need is kind of in there. So I'll just be copy-pasting from my other screen, which I conveniently are going to put here, and I'm just going to act like like I know all this stuff. But so we have F-sharp formatting. It's a pretty typical F-sharp project. There's nothing special to sort of for this use case. I just took it because, well, it doesn't use analyzers just yet. And let's just get started. So the first thing you do is you install a .NET tool called F-sharp analyzers. Once we did that, we can now run .NET F-sharp analyzers. We're basically going to need to give it a bunch of parameters, but for now, let's just call the help. And pretty standard stuff. It is a console application. It needs two things. It needs a project and an analyzer's path. So the first thing we're going to try and do is we're going to run some analyzers from both the G-Research Analyzer package as the community package, and we're just going to install them as NuGet packages because that's how they are shipped. So I want the analyzer package over here. And then I'll launch the Ionide analyzers over here. Let's just install all those. And just unloaded for some reason. So it installed analyzers over here. I actually want only to be have the analyzers included, so maybe that was the problem. Still not quite sure how to pull this off. That if you do a NuGet install, it only adds that line. But let's try and run these as well. Might have the same problem, and that's basically all we need. So we're telling NuGet over here that includes the analyzers, but don't don't include any DLLs or any binaries to the project itself for building. That's really not what we want. We just want to be aware that these things are installed, and the reason we're doing that is the command line tool takes in a path, and then that path should lead to analyzer binaries. And the interesting thing is if we install stuff via NuGet, we actually get a generated prop file. And in case you didn't notice, in your objects folder, the prop file is getting passed by NuGet, and that basically creates a PKG and build variable for all the things that you currently have installed. So in our case, we have this Ionide analyzers, or the G-Research one, and it basically has the value to my local NuGet cache. And on your PC, this is going to have a different value, but MS-Build will use this pass into the compiler and all that. So it basically is just a way to use that path later on and then to get something uniform out of there. But let's just maybe circle back and run the analyzers first so we get a bit of an idea what's up. So we run this NuGet package. It's hard-coded for now, and then later we'll sort of integrate it so we have a flow that works for everybody. Let's run it on a project, which would be the source and the stock, and that's the tool I installed. There we go. Yeah, so basically this is an elaborate step one, and what we're going to do is this runs the analyzer over all of these source files, and it actually found a bunch of warnings of things we're doing in our codes that we probably shouldn't. Now, this was a good first run. We'll sort of address these issues one by one while we go through them. But yeah, I mean, this was all very hard coded. Obviously, that's not what we want. So there should be a better way to invoke the tool, right? Yes, there is. And one might think we have some sort of a config file where we can put in all our specific stuff and invoke the command line with the config file. That's not really what we do. The thing we sort of investigated is could we add all our settings to just like MS builds, and we can install a F-sharp analyzers build NuGet. This actually just adds MS build targets, and then we'll just put all the information inside of MS builds, and then sort of run a NuGet targets and get it from there. I am again unsure why it unloads the project over here, but in this case we actually only need the builds assets, and now it kind of runs. This adds a couple of targets. This is again all listed in our documentation, but what we can now do is actually invoke one of these targets that was added. So we go to the source folder to fsdocs tool, and we now do .NET MS Build analyze F# projects. It's gonna complain, but because we're still missing some configuration, but it knows what this is now. So because we added this package, it actually has an extra target from MS Build, and we can invoke that target using the .NET MS Build flag. So it's a first good step. And the problem we're seeing is that our property F# analyze other flag should exist. And this is basically what the command line tool will need to invoke everything. Now, if we were to add this, it already knows about our project because of the way the target works, but of course it doesn't know what analyzers we'll be using. And if we then go back to that other file, we can actually just use this environment variable and pass that as our analyzers path. So just put it in quotes, just like the real XML goodness over here. So this is the variable. There we go. And now this will be passed to our targets. Let's try and run that again. And that should do exactly the same thing. Yep, as we can see. So that kind of invoked the command, and it kind of translated this environment variable, or well, MS build variable, to what's been generated by NuGet. So this works on my machine, but this will also work on your machine after .NET restore. So that's part of the magic. So what we'll do now is we'll take this and add like the next path, so we can pass in multiple paths here. And I'm just gonna split out all the all our properties line by line to start with, and you could have them all on one line. I'll just for clarity try and do it a little bit different. But we're also going to run the Ionide analyzers. So same thing. We basically say, hey, this property is now, well, the old value, and some append some new stuff to it. So if we do it like this, we'll have this again, and we'll also, we pretty much want to add maybe the verbose flag as well, because that tells us a little bit more what's going on. So verbose, and I'll do verbose, I'll do a little bit more. I'll add code root, so that basically tells you where is the root of the repository. You can pass this to indicate to the output file where it should be. And if we do reports, we'll be able to say, hey, we want to report a Thera file, and we can use this over here, which will be, let's do our build name, our target framework, and then use extensions to read. SRE file is actually a JSON file that will just capture everything that was reported over here. So this is all a lot of good stuff. We'll run the target again. The target will invoke the the command line tool with our msbuild other flags property, where we give it an analyzer path. It should now say that it's loaded 20 analyzers from 3 DLLs, so that's kind of a little bit suspicious. I was only expecting 2. So we'll need to check what's up with that. But in essence, it is, yeah, it seems to be running a lot of good things. And it really detected a lot of warnings. So there are Ionide warnings, there are G-Research warnings. So yeah, when you think that the code is fine, everything compiled, everything's formatted, all the tests pass, there still could be things going on, and that's sort of the power of analyzers to begin with. Let's take a look at what file was generated. So this is the fsdocs tool net6.3 file. If we open that, we can sort of see, or well, can see a little bit, but the IDE has some supports, and per problem that we had, we can sort of navigate to this immediately. And it you know, just points out the problem. So in this case, it says string ends with a single string argument is discouraged. That's basically because of some problems you could have in the string API. So a fix for this would be to, well, if you only have a single char, let's pass in a char here. Or in this case, we'll pass in the string comparison dot ordinal, and ordinal basically means it's going to do like a ordinal binary sort rules, and it's not going to take the current culture into account when comparing if the string ends with .html. And that will basically, if we run this whole thing again, these errors should then no longer exist. That's basically what I expect that happens. I'm still a little bit wondering about the 3 DLLs here. Potentially, yeah, potentially we need to be a little bit more strict of how we pass in. So by convention, an analyzer path is going to be in a folder called analyzers, and it's going to be in .NET FS. So we should double check that that indeed is the case, and maybe some NuGet package produces them in both folders. So if we take a look over here, we see, yes, I already see the problem. So they're in libnet6. We don't want to use the one from libnet6. By convention, we want to go analyzers.netfs and actually run only the DLL that was shipped over there. So that explains why we had 3 DLLs. I don't, I suspect that this package doesn't, well, that the Ionide isn't doing it like that. So if we briefly go and take a look, Ionide analyzers 04. Yeah, so it doesn't have the lib file there, so that sort of explains the small difference. Okay, good. So, well, that was our basic setup. That works for one project, but of course we have multiple projects. So, question would be, do we want, do we want this for all? Do we just duplicate that? That would work, but then all of a sudden we want to change a property, and then we have to change it for all the files. So you can kind of tell that that's not the direction we're going with. And in this case, we actually also have some bunch of test projects. So I don't think I want the analyzers to run on the test projects, because so there are unit test projects, but also just test projects to run code against. And I probably want to dodge that area altogether. So I'll create a directory build props file, or actually more or less a directory build targets file on the source level, just because it only would affect the projects that it finds over here. Good. This again is documented, and we're going to use the targets file and not the props file. I'll get to that in a minute. So just create a new file over here. Basically, this is a little bit of MS Build magic, but all in all, it's not the end of the world. It's not the worst thing. We're just going to roll with it a little bit, and I sort of this is what .NET is. Like MS Build is just such a core component of it, and yeah, I'm pretty okay with doing this one-time setup in MS Build and not having to parse some sort of special file just to pass in things in my command line. Like this isn't the worst evil. But I can understand that I probably already lost a couple of people just by proposing let's just do a solution in MS Build. And yeah, I hear you, but at the same time, this really is a one-off, so it should be fine. Cool. So I have this directory build targets for, well, for fun. Well, not really for fun, but there's also such a thing as a props file, and the prop file might serve as a good way to also add the NuGet packages. So we added these packages, but we can also just move them to an item group in the props file. So not a property group, but an item group in this case. And that will just include all the packages in, yeah, so it basically, the order of execution is the following. It first takes the prop file, it adds everything it sees over here to the fsproj and the csproj, and then it's going to evaluate the targets file. The target file is going to be evaluated after a NuGet restore has happened. So that's why these things are available. The PKG things are available inside of the targets file, but not inside of the props file. I mean, it would have been super nice if we could specify the props over here, have one thing and deal with it. But yeah, just the order of how this build works doesn't really overly make that possible. But just shifting these things a little bit around makes the whole MS Build target available in every project. So if I now go to F# formatting API docs, for example, I should be able to do just .NET MS Build /t analyze project. And after we restore, that should totally be possible. Okay. And as you can see, it yeah, it just picks this up. The other nice thing is that if we have something with multiple target frameworks, because of the NuGet package, the build one that added the target, it also will have generated the correct, well, it sort of runs the command line tool against both flavors of the targets in case you're doing multi-targeting. So that's very nice as well. Now, in this case, we probably want to tweak the properties a little bit, like the code root now no longer, well, actually that's still valid, so that's okay. And we probably want to report these refile 2 levels up to maybe like a report folder or something. So just to kind of bundle all the reports in one go. And yeah, that's nice. And now I can individually call .NET build for everything. The MS build target, create all the analyzer files, so it will work for everything in the source directory. But I kind of want to do this in one go as well. So as a final sort of step, what we can do is invoke create a directory solution prop file and directory solution target file, and then basically do a little bit of magic on the solution level that we invoke everything for well, for all the projects. So this is again a little bit of MS Build lore, but yeah, this is all a one-time setup, and I'm not overly doing anything out of the ordinary, as it's all .NET SDK goodness. So we create one last target file that should pop up. Oh, was one level too low, so let's move that. And create that file again. Lost track of it. There we go. And now we can say, give me an item group, and we're just gonna say the project to analyze. I am again just more or less cheating and looking at the documentation over here, so I'm just even copy paste that. Give me all the fsproj under the source folder, and then let's just say, okay, analyze the solution. I'm also just gonna copy paste the target file even. Analyze the solution, projects to analyze, this will evaluate to everything found here. And then for each project, run this target. Again, this target is listed because of the NuGet package we have over here. This analyzer build. And yeah, we're basically at the solution level are going to say analyze the entire solution, which if I do it like this, I'm expecting every single project to be evaluated. And if I set it up correctly, I'm also expecting a reports folder to be created, and everything will be in there as well. Let's maybe double check just a little bit. So yes, reports. All of a sudden, reports is being created. And we can already see that it found the same problems, obviously. And then later on, we'll go into some of the analysis once the tool's finished. And I might want to index this as well. So for API docs, yeah, there are multiple problems. This is also an interesting one. So at some point we suggested that partial application should be avoided. This was a bit of a misunderstanding on our part. Like it's to be avoided within certain G research projects, but it's not really something that we wanna take into account maybe for this project. Like partial application itself isn't evil. It can just be tricky and debug can lead to problems when debugging. So that's sort of where that rule in the first place comes from. So it ran all the projects. We have all the Sarah files, and we're just going to try and see, can we filter out this partial application one, because it's not really relevant to what we're trying to do here. So in our targets, let's do one more line. Let's say over here, there's something called exclude, if I recall correctly. So let me just run in the options one last time. Analyzers help. You can exclude an analyzer, and then you need the analyzer name, which is a bit of a tricky thing. Analyzer name. It's not the code, so I'll briefly probably need to look into the source code, how we named this thing. So all this is just out in the open in F# analyzers. And yeah, I do admit that the fact I need to go and look for the name. Wait, probably if I view this thing in JSON, yes, the partial application, it probably has a name, maybe. So there's a rule index. Yeah, it doesn't say. So let's just go into the source code real quick. Partial application analyzer. And the name is partial app analyzer. So yeah. But if we were to exclude this name, then of course run it again for everything, it should not warn us about that anymore. So yeah, you could briefly see it. It's now registered 12 analyzers, so it did filter that one out. Um, while it did that, we can also take a look at correcting these. So the ends with ones are rather straightforward. We typically want ordinal all over the place for these. So it starts with string comparison, ordinal. If it's a single character, I tend to use the character API. There we go. Yep. And these are things like there's no shame in who wrote this code or whatnot. Like this is something I didn't think about for quite some time. And yeah, that's why an analyzer sort of exists. Like it just helps you point out these things where you typically may not think about. Over time, of course, when you need to correct this multiple times, you start thinking about them. But yeah, it's easy to overlook. That's okay. The probably need to refresh. Yep, there we go. So this is one of the Ionide analyzers, and for the Ionide analyzers, there actually is a bit of a website as well, where all the rules are kind of listed, and this is something we plan to do for the G research ones as well, but well, didn't really get to it. But it tells you a little bit more what kind of problem. So we can see Ionide 005, and then there's the empty string analyzer. And it is better to check for string length or if not null or empty than to just compare it with the equals compare with the empty string. So this was a Roslyn analyzer, and with this was ported. So we'll maybe just go and if string is null or empty, do it like that. We system not string. There we go. This is try exactly one. The problem with this one is a virtual call, so eval strings isn't even used. Maybe that's more of a problem than what the analyzer reports. But the virtual call one is that this probably can be replaced instead of using seek by using the concrete collection that's coming in. Although, yeah, maybe we can just remove that altogether. Not quite sure if it's not being used. I don't know. Life's too short. Let's go with it. Then there also are some. I kind of wish this refreshed a little bit. Not sure if I can easily close this report. I'm also a little bit questionable whether this is triggering for the correct reason, so it really depends on what's the usage of this. But we're passing in a list over here. And if this is the only usage, which I think it actually is, then we can just say this is a string list. And if we know that we're passing in a string list over here, that is basically what the analyzer is trying to warn us about. We can just as easily use try one. So, and yeah, kind of wondering. Parameter. Oh, it's even an array now. Array. Okay, does that do the trick? I'm gonna build it again. And of course, see if everything still works as expected. Which appears to be. And we have some problems. Let's. So there's a note which is. So the hint is like to give these names. So this is like self and children, I suppose. It is better to use the postfix instead of this notation, which is something that comes from the style guides. And again, this is like moderate. I can see why people don't see this as a warning. It's just a little nicer, and if the style guide recommends this, then why not go with it? Then this is kind of interesting. So this eventually gets compiled to to some codes that will do like an equality check based on the match over here. And this is a very fancy way of not using an if statement. So we can just do if system string is null or white space instead of the pattern match thing, which I think is a bit nicer. Else. There we go. And I tend to sort of flip the conditions. Let's first negate, and if this just has content, let's return that first. I sort of prefer to have the long branch of my if else as the else branch, and then like if it's the normal scenario, like this is not null or white space, then just return that. Else do something more elaborate. Bit of a nitpick. And we have the same problem over here. So let's just say if not our white space. And here we go. Which makes me wonder if I got that other one right. Yeah, I think so. Okay. This is again very easy to miss, but inside of a pattern match, it would in this case be better to consider this like a fee, and then say when not string as not a white space fee, something along those lines. Yeah. Okay, there actually are quite a lot of problems like this, so I don't think it's super interesting that I fixed these all during the stream. I should definitely fix them, but um, as I guess a bit of a last step, let's see how can we interact with this on GitHub Actions. So to bring it home, and if we go to the pull request YAML, I'll try and add an additional step. So we're gonna run CI and then we're gonna run analyzers. And just trying and upload our Serif files. So I just copy this from the docs. We're basically gonna say Serif file is in the reports folder, and we'll also need to run the analyze solution. And we should be able to just run this command because everything in the CI file will be done. I'm not going to include this in the build scripts for the, well, reason that this job is allowed to fail. And I guess we don't want to necessarily run the analyzers for each operating system. So in that regard, I'll add a little bit of conditional magic to it, which I'm going to totally cheat on the other screen and grab it from Phantomus where I did this before. But the thing is, we probably only want to run this on Ubuntu. And if this indeed found warnings, it's okay to produce like another exit code in 0, just so that we see it in action and well, have a sense of where the problems are. And yeah, we're going to do, so we say if the matrix is Ubuntu in both cases, and it also needs a continue on error. So even if there are errors, which could be the case that it really found something problematic, it's okay to continue because you want to upload the files. So that should be fine. There, of course, is a little bit of configuration necessary in order to allow to do these things. So we'll probably need some additional permissions, basically, from GitHub. And again, I don't really know these by heart, so I'm just stealing them from another project. Let's try and add them over here. The security event, I think that's actually the ones we're after right now. Don't think we need those, so I'll leave them out for now. And I think these two allow us to write the serif files, well, export the serif files to CodeQL, and this thing will eventually show things inside of GitHub itself. That's basically what we want to do. We probably also want this to be pushed on main, but that's again something I can do offline. Cool. So, bit of a recap. We actually touched a lot of files. Let's first maybe go to the git ignore and let's remove the reports folder. We never really want to check that one in. Let's commit into phases. We probably want like let's delete those as well. We probably want to do all the MS build magic in one go. And yeah, this can be reverted. So let's say use sharp analyzer SDK. Then the next thing, run analyzers during CI. Okay, should have. Yeah, it should have been part of my commit a while ago. Yeah. I'm just gonna do it like that. Probably we're gonna squash this as one commit anyway, so before we commit the code file, I'm just gonna format everything I changed and still needed to format because that's gonna be checked. And I think this is fine. We'll definitely see what CI says. Let's just call this improve codes based on analyzers. Do git push. And let's create the pull requests. Use analyzers. Something like C SDK. Snotty. Guess it's not the best title, but I'm also kind of one of the maintainers here, so should be fine. The interesting thing would be to see what happens during the Ubuntu run. I might need to change some of the settings, so I'm not quite sure if this is gonna work from the get-go or not. And this also makes me wonder whether the build script is gonna run everything again release mode. I'm not sure if I'm analyzing the solution in release mode, so that might be another interesting thing to be aware of, although I'm not entirely sure that it's going to be relevant. Maybe it is. Let's maybe jump back to like a .NET clean. Do a .NET build of release. And run the analyzers again and then see if that works out or not, or if I really need to specify it. It appears to be working. I'm not quite sure. It is most likely, like you can see, it takes the generated files from debug, so I probably don't want that. Which is something I think I can configure in the analyzers as well. Yes, configuration. So let's go back to our builds directory, builds targets, and let's just pass in maybe over here, configuration release. Like clear now. Oh, run that again. Let's just see if that gets picked up or not. I mean, there might be a bit of a spoiler in, yeah, or even a run CI. So depending on what we did in terms of code changes, maybe a test got broken. So kind of fear for the worst right now. Stage is cancelled or timeout. It does suspiciously look at the 30-second mark, which wonder if that's a problem or not. However, we can see release is now being ran, so let's just get at source targets. And I can, oh, there we go. Run analyzers in release modes. To run the analyzers, your code to some extent does need to be definitely restored, because otherwise, well, the flags aren't available. And in this case, there's like a C# project, and that definitely needs to exist on disk in order for project tracking to properly load everything. So, not quite sure why this is problematic all of a sudden. Might be a GitHub hiccup, although could just easily run everything locally ourselves and see if that still works. Should be a little bit faster. And yeah, whether Windows does fine or not doesn't really tell us that much. Let's take a look at the next run. I could already tell. So the test failed. Yeah, I'm afraid we definitely broke something. Whoops. Let's take a look at the code we actually changed and see if there's anything obvious over there. Ah, yes. So when not, that probably shouldn't be a not. Oh, oh, oh. Run. Also notice the little TL flag I keep passing in. It does this more fancy update of your build output. I really like it. Yeah, okay, that probably was it. Correct code. Wonderful message there. And yeah, now with a little bit of patience, we'll find out if the analyzers are being run and what sort of GitHub does with all that. While we do that, briefly mention the SDK itself. So it has a very, basic how do you do it, what's the key, and there's like a more elaborate getting started guide, which is basically what we did today. Like you can download the NuGet package, and the analyzers need to somewhere know where to load DLLs to sort of run your code against. And we sort of have a solution, which I demonstrated, is well, we could use MS Build to do a little orchestration. For those of you clever guys that are using Packet, you can, yes, easily download Packet, tell Packet to download stuff in a folder inside your repository, and you know, that might help you avoid a little bit of the environment variable thing we did. But you know, not everybody uses Packet. I wouldn't really use Packet anymore. Maybe that's a hot take, but I'll stand by it. And yeah, we created three files. Needed to add props to our target and not the build props, but we also had to build props for the packages, so we had a bit of both. Good stuff. So we sort of slapped everything together in a directory solution target, just have one single command to rule them all. And that's more or less what we're at right now. And lastly, we're trying to upload everything in GitHub Actions. We noted that the tests are running right now, which seems to be going well because tests finished and now generate docs is taking over. And after the docs are being generated, I think it's going to be the moment of truth to analyze the solution. And eventually we should, you know, see the things we didn't fix that our analyzer will still report. If it reports everything correctly, yeah, okay, registered 12 analyzers from 2 DLLs. So notice that this path, yeah, just good old MS build and then NuGet, it figured out where everything is. And it should give us some sort of code scanning overview of all the problems it still found. And that should happen after this upload step. So definitely still some warnings left. And it is running everything in release as well, I believe. So yeah, we can see this opt release, so that's all good. And if you're interested in contributing to, so there's the SDK, which you can, is the building blocks that are run and roll your own analyzers. And there are the analyzers from the community. So all these are basically, these are just a bunch of analyzers that, yeah, are interested for general projects, for general purpose projects. And then last but not least, we also have the G Research analyzers, which is some analyzers we created on the specific, on behalf of G Research with specific use cases that they encountered in production. So, okay, good. So that's all green. So it did the upload, I hope. And now I think I should be able to see in my pull requests. So GitHub says something, and this is kind of weird because it gives you a green check that this worked. It says no alerts changed by this code, but when you go to detail, you can go to branch alerts, and then you see that there's like a bunch of things that this thing found. So I don't quite get the, you know, UI for GitHub just yet. Like, why didn't it just told me there's a lot of issues going on with the code after this check? But nonetheless, it you know, it detected it, and we can sort of click on this. It tells us the rule. It tells us in build commands. It couldn't find the file, so I'm wondering. I'm not quite sure what's up there, although maybe that's because the code didn't touch that file or that specific line and it can't show you the preview. But nonetheless, it definitely, you know, just tells you that there's a lot of things wrong still, and yeah, those are to be addressed in future commits. All right, so recap: this was a little bit of MS build magic, and you know, we have this now. This works. It's fine. There's a lot of good stuff in the NuGet. You have your configuration in one place. You're kind of still playing ball with the way the .NET SDK works. To me, this is all very acceptable stuff. And yeah, thanks for watching. And remember, you can hire me to work on open source projects. So take it home.